last-minute shake-up at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning, Ryan. Is okay with
And staying in front of the day isn't always
Thanks,
as simple
Ryan.
as 1,
What's
2,
up?
3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Strong Mind, Strong Body. I'm your host, Angie Miller, and today we're diving into something that affects every single one of us, and that's human connection. Not just love, but the broader, richer tapestry of human connection that shapes all of our lives. You know that feeling when you're new to a city or a country or a job, or even you're new to a family when you meet someone very special? Maybe you're new to a friend group or any type of organized group. Or maybe you've had that experience of being in a room full of people, but you still feel alone. Whatever the situation, you're not alone in feeling alone or feeling lonely. A recent Cigna study found that 61% of Americans report feeling lonely. And that's what inspired this episode today, called Beyond Loneliness, the Power of Small Connections. Because those micro connections, there's research-backed strategies that we can use to turn these daily interactions into meaningful moments so that we can create or belong or have a sense of belonging. So why is it that 61% of Americans report feeling lonely? Well, this study found that a lack of social support and infrequent meaningful interactions was a big part of that. Also, people reported feeling negative about their personal relationships, also poor physical and mental health. And finally, a lack of balance in one's daily activities. So, doing too much or too little of any given thing, too much work, too little sleep, or vice versa. But here's what's fascinating. The antidote isn't necessarily finding romantic love, even though that's what's out there in society. Everyone wants to be a partner or be partnered, but it's really something so much simpler and within your reach right now. And last year I did an episode with Olivia Ellis, and we talked about love, and we talked about some of this research behind connection and mitigating loneliness. And I want to kind of play off of that and go a little bit deeper into this, because really it's connection. It's simple human connection that's at the core of helping us feel less lonely. So Dr. Barbara Friedrichsen at the University of North Carolina found that even micro moments of connection create what she calls positivity resonance, which is this synchronized physical and biochemical response between people that can occur even during the briefest micro moments of positive connection. So that essentially means that small positive interactions can create a shared sense of well-being and connection between individuals. So those micro moments, it could be a smile, a kind word, a brief moment of eye contact. All of those can trigger a positivity resonance effect. It also means that it can build stronger relationships. So when we accumulate, or those micro moments accumulate over time, our connection to humans grows over time, and it can significantly strengthen relationships and foster overall well-being. Think about any of your relationships. They all started with a micro connection, a hello or a smile, or maybe a hand holding or a hug or whatever it might be. But it also means that we can It also means that it can happen anywhere. So those micro connections over time, not only do they significantly strengthen our relationships, they happen in the smallest of moments. So I get it when I walk my dog Bodie. Every hello to someone in the neighborhood, every smile, every small exchange of words, that literally lights me up and makes me and hopefully the other person feel connected. Because anytime that someone notices me or I notice them, we have this sense that we're not invisible and that somebody values our time and our energy. It also happens at the gym. I go to teach a class, and it's not just the people who take my class, it's the people at the front desk, the members that I pass. All those moments make me feel connected, and that connection makes us feel like we belong to a community, whether it's our neighborhood or it's a gym or a local coffee shop or a grocery store, or maybe it's our work environment. Micro connections matter. As a matter of fact, there's so much more research about this than the idea of big love, if you will. So, UCLA researchers have also discovered that social connection doesn't just make us feel good, it actually, are you ready for this? It reduces inflammation in our bodies and it strengthens our immune system. Can you imagine? It's not just good for your mind, it's literally good for your body. When we feel connected, we're not just happier, we're healthier inside and out. I think that's kind of amazing, right? Lowers our, basically reduces our inflammation. So we're not as likely to get sick, right? And strengthens our immune system. So Dr. Matthew Lieberman's research published in his book called Social, Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect, shows something fascinating. Social pain. So, in other words, like that feeling of rejection or loneliness or isolation, that's pain. Social pain activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. So, feeling isolated hurts in the same way that physical injury does. I think that's absolutely fascinating and spot on. Because if you've ever felt lonely or isolated or you've had that sense of rejection, it does feel physical. And you know that that's true. Just like loss when you lose someone you love, or things that cut really deep into your core, like breakups or moves or whatever it might be. And if you're thinking long term about the effects, the Harvard study of adult development, it's one of the longest running studies on happiness, has a clear message. Strong relationships are the key predictor of both happiness and longevity. We live longer, healthier, and happier when we are connected to other humans. So, where do these opportunities lie in everyday connection? Well, first, I have a story for you. I have a story about my own experience with pretty severe loneliness and my desperate need for human connection. I actually have two stories where I remember being just gut wrenchingly lonely in my life. One was when I very first graduated from college and moved to Kansas City to teach school and didn't know anyone. That was probably my first severe bout of loneliness where I was like, oh, I am completely isolated and have no connection. But I'm going to tell you about another time that I fell into deep, unrelenting loneliness. And again, it has to do with another move. This was later in life. So in 2018, when we left Chicago to come to Charlotte, I left the best phase of my career. So think loss of connection in every facet of my life, because it wasn't just my career, it was family, friends, you name it. So in Chicago, I was working as a therapist in private practice. I was teaching at Northern Illinois University. I was teaching fitness classes. I had friends. My sisters were a few hours away. And I traveled for NASM to teach workshops at conventions and clubs. I had human connection in abundance. And even though my daughters didn't live at home when we left Chicago, it was easy for them to get to us. And so I had them coming home. I saw them a lot more. So I had it all: a flourishing, multifaceted career, constant interaction from humans of all walks of life. And then we moved. And it was brutal. It was our fifth move and by far the most difficult move I've ever experienced. And in fact, one of the most difficult periods in my life. It was a hard hit to my mental health and well being. It tested my resilience. I got depressed. I got very anxious, and it made me feel so disconnected and oddly very unsure of myself. Because it wasn't just that I left behind my career and my life, I had no support system. My daughters were grown, so I couldn't meet people through their activities like I used to do with the other moves. My husband had moved for his same company, so he had a built-in network. But me, I didn't have anyone, right? I didn't have any friends or family nearby. And I had just left my career. So I kind of didn't have my identity anymore. To say I was lonely was an understatement. And then soon after the move, think about it, the pandemic hits, right? So, guys, I had no connection outside of my spouse. And yeah, I like the guy, but come on, he's not the only connection that I need. I needed a career and people and daily interactions. So, when you're new to a city or a career and you don't have friends and no family, that's not the best timing for a pandemic. So, first thing I did, well, I shamelessly begged my daughter to move to Charlotte, but we won't talk about that. Actually, what I did then was I got Bodhi, my pandemic puppy. Do any of you have one of those pandemic puppies? Or maybe it's a pandemic kitty? They're the best, right? So Bodhi was like my child. And thanks to him, I met tons of people. He's super bubbly. He's got this great personality and he thinks everyone's his friend. And I was like, yes, this is the dog for me because I think everyone is my friend. So we would walk the hood, that would be the neighborhood. And of course, thanks to Bodhi being all cute and charming, we started to know everyone in the neighborhood. And suddenly I felt like I belonged to something and I had a place. And guess what? These weren't my friends. I don't go out with people in my neighborhood. Okay, a couple of them I do. I do a book club with them. But they're not really like people that I go out and do crazy things with. But it's those micro connections that light me up every single day and make me feel like I belong to this neighborhood. So it was a long way from bottom, but I got there. And honestly, it was one smile, one hello, one face to face eye contact, and one exchange of words at a time. Next thing you know, I'm coming up from the heaviness. My resilience is building. So is my career and my friendship circle. It's not easy. And the hardest thing about being new to a situation, a job, a community, a city, a state, a country, a family, if you start dating someone, the hardest thing is that it's usually you who has to make the first effort. So you have to get really good at it. Because if there's one thing I know to be true after all those moves is that a lot of people never move. They haven't moved in their whole lives, or they haven't moved since childhood or college. They don't know your experience. They don't know what it's like to feel new to a company because maybe they've been there 20 years, or maybe they had a friend who got them on with a company, so they had an automatic network. So you have to get used to going on a limb. You have to invite yourself, literally, because I did that and I still do that. You have to get used to initiating, and you have to get used to just like initiating to the point where a lot of times people will forget about inviting you because you're not top of mind, because they are so used to their friend group that they don't even think about inviting you until they do, until you get to be in that text chain or whatever it is that gets everyone together. So for me, it always starts at the gym where I go teach fitness classes so I can build a community. And then it builds by meeting women who introduce me to women. And the thing is everyone going to invite you into your circle, into their circle? Probably not. Will some of them not be very friendly at all? Absolutely. But it doesn't stop me. And I hope it doesn't stop you, because the bottom line is those aren't your people, right? So whether it's a new move, a new job, a new family, when you meet someone, it's going to be tough. Or when you start something new, it's going to be tough, but you'll get there with a little bit of courage, some honesty, and honestly, a willingness to maybe humiliate yourself once in a while. I would even go so far as to say that. But let's break down. Let's get to the heart of the matter. But before I do, I just want to reintroduce myself. My name is Angie Miller. This is Strong Mind, Strong Body. And I'm talking to you about beyond loneliness and the power of micro connections and how they can help us stave off loneliness and give us a sense of community and belonging, which is huge for all of us as humans. So let's break down some practical ways to build connections outside of the gym and outside of a pandemic puppy or outside of inviting yourself, which I've already said. One of the easiest ways to create micro connection is eye contact. Research shows that maintaining eye contact for about 3 seconds creates optimal connection without any discomfort. There's also the power of names. Studies at the Institute of Cognitive Neuroscience show that hearing our own name activates unique brain patterns. It's why Dale Carnegie was right when he said using someone's name really does matter. The thing is that when someone remembers my name, and if they've only met me once or twice, I'm like, I don't know what it is about names, but it really makes us feel like people care enough to remember us. It's huge. So if you're good with names, or even if you're not, try to get good at it because it makes a big difference in meeting and connecting with people. There's also the hello challenge. Just saying hello to people you pass. People in an elevator, people on an airplane, people on the street. Research shows that people underestimate how positive interactions with strangers can support our mental well-being and make us feel connected. But they can, big time. And I have something else that I think is worth sharing here. The thing is, if you don't do those things, if you're not willing to put yourself out on a limb, we can get caught up in something that researchers call the loneliness loop. So, one renowned loneliness researcher calls it the loneliness loop. He says that loneliness isn't just a feeling, it's actually a biological response that triggers self-preservation. And that self-preservation often turns out to be self-defeat. So it's like this. When you go into self-preservation mode, you already kind of feel defeated. You're protected, right? So your brain literally goes into protective mode. And that makes you more alert to these perceived social threats. And that makes you withdraw even further. Think about like any situation, like with bullying or whatever it is. When somebody doesn't feel like they belong, they start to go inside and literally pull themselves in even more for protection. But this researcher from the University of Chicago, and I'll spell his name because I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Dr. Cacioppo. His research found that lonely people then tend to be more sensitive to negative social cues. They remember negative social information more than positive, and they anticipate rejection more readily. Yep. They go into protection and self-preservation. And this makes so much sense to me because when I was new to Charlotte, and anytime I'm new to a job or a situation, I am more sensitive. I do have more self-doubt because it's like isolation breeds negative thinking and you start to lose your self-belief. You don't have that confidence that comes from belonging. Instead, you have this sense that you're being rejected, and that causes doubt and sensitivity. But here's the good news. We can break this cycle. Research shows that small progressive steps in social connection can rewire those response patterns. So we don't have to find a lover or a significant other. It's so much more than romance and intimacy. There are active steps we can take to rewire that protection. And I have some for you. First, I'm going to call it the connection portfolio. Because just like financial advisors will tell us, don't put all your eggs in one stock or one mutual fund, we shouldn't put all of our connection needs into one relationship because that's a recipe for disaster. So the Blue Zones researcher, Dan Buettner, he says, he's the one who studied like the world's longest living people. He says that strong social networks were a crucial factor to longevity, not just romance. But it wasn't just strong connections, it was the diverse web of connections that mattered. So, in other words, not just your significant other, but friendships and interactions in the street, right? We need a diversified portfolio of connections, if you will. So, some of the connections that we need are the friendship bonds. One study found that having strong friendships, are you ready for this? Was a better predictor of well being in older age than even family relationships. That's kind of crazy, right? Also, community connections. Research shows that we need community involvement because that can reduce our risk of depression by 50%. And then last but not least, intergenerational relationships. Studies show that relationships across age groups can reduce ageism and increase wisdom transmission. Yes, yes, yes. I love that one because I teach seniors and I think they have so much wisdom. But I also teach people of all ages and I speak all over and I meet people of all ages. And I love that I learned something from the 20-year-olds and I learned something from the 80-year-olds. But here's some more action steps you can take that you can get out there and create these micro connections and you can turn them into meaningful moments. One would be what we call the 5-minute favor. Research shows that small acts of helping others create stronger social bonds. So commit to maybe one 5-minute favor a day. So it's like instead of thinking, what can or will other people do for me? It's what can I do for them? And then we get that sense of satisfaction that we helped another human being. Another one is called the connection audit. So maybe take 5 minutes on a Sunday night, if you will, and map out your weekly interactions. Where could you add small moments of connection? Could it be walks? Could it be taking a class in something you enjoy or want to learn? Or even smaller things like talking to the barista when you get a cup of coffee or introducing yourself to one person each day, saying hello, smiling, holding the door for someone, making eye contact, shaking their hand, striking up a conversation in the elevator or at the grocery store or any store. And then there's also digital boundaries. Let's face it, when we limit social media, we increase our ability to have face-to-face interaction. The less time you're digital, the more time you're present. So instead of living through others, live for yourself. That's my suggestion. Because that's what I think social media is, right? Living through others. And then there's the gratitude visit. Positive psychology researcher Martin Seligman shows that expressing gratitude in person boosts well-being for both parties. So maybe go out of your way and tell someone how and why you appreciate them. Maybe it's your house cleaner, your yard person, your coworker, the person who stands next to you at the gym and smiles. Maybe it's your friend or your neighbor or your spouse or your kid. Any of those people. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with this thought. Every meaningful relationship in your life, every deep friendship, every loving partnership started with a single moment of connection, a smile, a hello, or a laugh. So your next life-changing connection might just be one small interaction away, one eye contact scenario, one person's name that you learn, or one genuine compliment. You don't have to do it overnight. Just start with a small connection today. So in the words of Leo Buscaglia, too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have potential to turn a life around. So thank you for joining me on Strong Mind, Strong Body. I'm your host, Angie Miller, reminding you that connection isn't just about love. It's about creating meaningful moments every single day. I'll see you next week.